Page 152, in the explanation of the characteristic of the trait of anava, humility. So he says, we've already discussed above the ganus, the unworthiness of gava, of arrogance. And from this you can hear, you'll understand the praise of anava, of humility. In other words, arrogance and humility are opposite ends, are diametrically antithetical to each other. So if you don't have any arrogance, by default, you have humility, and vice versa. You can't be humble and be arrogant at the same time. It's one or the other. So now, right? So now, what is anava? But now we're going to explain more precisely the idea of humility, and then it will become clear what gaiva is from that. So behold, klal anava, the whole idea of anava is for a man to not consider bliti makshavatzmo b'shum tam shiyed. A person should not take himself into consideration. Now this is more, it's nuanced, as we're going to see by the three men, but that's the essential concept of anava, of humility. Zeh chefa hagaiva mamash. This is actually the direct opposite of arrogance, right? Look at me. Who am I? It's fascinating, right? Because the whole, I can't believe some of the junk that goes out there. You know, the Talmud says that if the Gentiles say they have chachma, you can believe them. But if they say they have Torah, you're not allowed to believe them. So what is chachma? So they can have chachma. They can
have wisdom.
What? Wisdom.
Have wisdom.
Buy low, sell high. Right? They can have wisdom. Right? They can have wisdom, but they don't have Torah. But when it comes to therapy, psychology, and don't get me wrong, I think that therapy is a very healthy thing, and people should do it when it's necessary. And I've recommended lots of people to take therapy. But in general, they're thinking of, if a person goes into therapy and he learns all about how to help people from the psychology books, I don't think it's possible to not be crazy. Some of the stuff they teach and they think. I was telling the story, I think the other time, my nephew was becoming a psychiatrist. And I picked up one of his books when I was in England, and it's such nonsense. I mean, some things they got, but this is talking about abuse. The abuse really points, and we know we're digressing a lot, but abuse really points out how little they understand, because they have
what do they say abuse is?
Well, that's the whole point. Is they have no. First of all, the lack of humility is staggering, because they have no idea what humility is. There's no idea what. No, it's just humility. They have no idea. Humility is a little easier. No idea what abuse is. All they can do is describe. All they can do is describe what it looks like. And this is pointed out to me. I have a friend who's a really great guy, frum guy, and he's got a double PhD from two very prestigious universities in psychology. The guy's a genius, right? And I would discuss with him cases that I'm dealing with, and he would very often give me really interesting insights in them. But this was shocking. I was talking to him about a particular case, and I was describing what the kids in this family were going through. It made him cringe. And he's heard a lot of bad stuff. So I said to him at the end, I was describing the whole thing. I said, what can we do for the kids? So he asked me, well, how do the kids present? Like, what are their issues? And I said, well, thank God we've been really, been really working this case. And we've mitigated a lot of the stuff that's been thrown at them. And they don't present any issues. On the outside, they look perfectly fine. He said, well, if that's the case, there's nothing we can do for them. So I was just shocked. I said, what do you mean there's nothing? He says, if people don't present us with an issue, there's nothing we can do. Now, this shows you how imbecilic and primitive psychology is. It's not even really fair to call it a science, because even modern medicine, which I have a lot of problems with, but nevertheless, even modern medicine can determine that you have a disease even though you're asymptomatic. Like, you don't have to present with an issue for the doctor to say you got a problem. Right? In fact, I know a number of people who the doctor told them, listen, you need to don't stop at go straight to the emergency room. You're about to drop dead. Right? And and it was true, right? I know a number of people that this has happened to. Like, the medicine can tell you have a problem. The problem with medicine is the lack of humility, the same way psychology has a lack of humility. And when they don't know something, they'll never tell you they don't know. They just love to give names for things to make you think that they know what they're talking about. So you have ADHD, right? This is a classic one, right? ADHD, right? Or ADD, right? What's ADD, right? Attention deficit disorder. Right? What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. It just means like you're bouncing off the walls, right? It's not telling you what you have. It's just telling you how you present. It's not telling you what the inner workings of your mind are going through. It's just, you got this problem, right? AIDS was another one, right?
You know the Yiddish word for that.
Yeah, Spilkus.
Spilkus.
Yeah, right. It's been going for a long time. But you said, right, so you see, but that's medicine. At least sometimes they get it right. But psychology, so they don't have a definition of abuse. They only have a definition. They only have an example of what it looks like. So if a guy comes in and he's beaten by his father, and he's like, he can't walk out the apartment, right? He's been abused. You could have another guy gone through exactly the same thing, and he's perfectly fine. And that, in fact, the book I was reading presented those two cases. One person, the way they described it was phenomenal. They said one person is perfectly fine, even though they went through a tremendous so-called abuse, and the other guy went through a lot of abuse and is not fine. Right. And I wanted to say to the book, even I know that you can't talk to books, not those books anyway. And I wanted to say to the book, how do you know he's fine? Just because he can walk and chew gum at the same time doesn't mean he's fine.
Right, because they're looking at how does the person present? Are they showing any issues? Are they behaving badly towards others, etc.? Are they in any way a danger? Yada, yada, yada. But they're not looking at the person's eyes and saying, are you still there? Is your light still there? Do you still
Exactly. So modern psychology, there's no concept of a neshama. Right. It's very similar to Buddhism. Buddhism has no neshama either. They don't believe in the neshama. There's no concept of it, right? So it's how you present. So all they do is they deal with how you present. So if you have big headache, give them a lobotomy. And they just do, right? Oh, this makes sense. Let's just take that bit of the brain out. Let's take a bit of the brain out that's giving you the headache. Or and they do this stuff, and lo and behold, it works. They don't understand why it works, how it works, what it does, nothing. They just playing around. Oh, I think this is Yisraela.
Hi.
Very good. Welcome. Okay. So we're talking about humility, page 152. So I don't know how we got onto abuse and that kind of stuff. Oh,
no,
so
we're saying that psychology does not have humility.
Oh, so when it comes to humility and arrogance, they deal with it in the same way they deal with self-confidence. You see, lack of self-confidence, in the same way, if it hurts, they cut it out. It's very interesting. One of my mentors was Peter Drucker, and if you know who he was, very famous time management guru. So he said to me that when Drucker came out, they hated him. So Freud said, he told me he met Freud. He was a little boy in Vienna. His parents, was born in Vienna, and his mother was a prominent doctor in Vienna. And Freud used to come over to their house. So he met Freud as a little boy. So he said when Freud came out with this stuff, they all attacked him, like they went after him crazy time. So he said the reason they hated him is because, well, not the reason they hated him, there's a different reason. But he said one of the things that they hated about him was they thought that the modern medicine at the time, Vienna was the Mayo Clinic of the world at the time. And they believed that you could cure everybody with a pill and a knife. That was it. You just got to figure out the chemical thing, you're going to take the pill. And if you can't do that, you just cut it out. And they could cure everyone. And Freud came along and said, no. There's a whole other world that people are suffering from. And not only can't you cure it with a pill and a knife, it's much more amorphous than you can possibly imagine. Like the cure is not so simple. It's very nuanced. Everyone's different. It takes a lot of personal judgment. You can't just read a book and say, okay, take this medication, right? So Drucker said to him, the reason they hated him, Ford always claimed that it was anti-Semitism, right? So Drucker said to me, he said, it was absurd because other than my mother, all the prominent doctors in Vienna were Jewish. He said the reason they hated him is because they were all socialists. That's where socialized medicine came from. Is because when the war hit, all these guys went to England, Australia, and Canada, which became the prominent places of socialized medicine. They all adopted socialized medicine because of these doctors. They became the leading doctors and they pushed this idea. So he said the reason they hated him is because Freud says you can't cure anyone unless they pay for it.
Oh.
And they hated that because they're all socialists. Right?
Are you telling me they worked for free?
What's that?
Are you telling me they worked for free?
No, they're socialists. Other people should work for free.
Got it.
It's a socialist. Right? So how do we get onto this? Oh, so for instance, the self-confidence, how do you build self-confidence? Right? Because self-confidence is the feeling, I don't feel good about myself. So they just do the opposite. So feel good about yourself. Tell yourself you're wonderful, lots of positive affirmations, have lots of successes, and it's complete nonsense. And it doesn't work. And even though they've been doing this for now 50, 60 years, and they're not getting any results, any good results, they still buy into this whole idea. The same thing with arrogance. The people who are arrogant are a pain in the neck, as we all know. Right? So how do you deal with arrogance? So tell the person that they're not big shot. And the famous line that exemplifies this concept by Winston Churchill, that he said there was a guy in Parliament who was very humble. Of course, he had lots to be humble about, right? Meaning that humility comes from lack of success in any area, right? And that's not humility. That's not the humility that the Torah is talking about. There is a kind of humility that comes from that, from a self-deprecation, but it's not the Jewish idea. So anyway, so So what is humility, right? Is to not think about yourself. It's not think about yourself badly. See, there's a big distinction. That's a very important distinction. Humility is not thinking about yourself badly. That's just silly. That's stupid. That's counterproductive. It's to not think about yourself. I don't count. I'm not in this picture. Right? That's humility. That's the concept we're going for. In other words, whenever you think about, oh, poor me, I'm, whenever it starts, I this, I that, you're getting into arrogance. Not healthy at all. Okay,
But
let me
Boris,
this more. Yeah.
I get what you said up until you said I don't count. And when I heard that, there was like something inside of me that's like, what? Everything else I'm with, but that little phrase, oi.
Yeah, right.
What does that mean we don't count? If we didn't count, then we wouldn't be here. God wouldn't put us here.
No, for sure you count.
But the translation here says humility is a person who should regard himself as unimportant in all circumstances. That's different than doesn't count.
Oh, you're reading ahead. That's not allowed.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're reading ahead. We're going to get there, right? We're going to get there, right? So, how do you feel good about yourself? I'll give you an example, right? I've used this example many times. You're on one of the landing boats, 1943, I think it was, 44, something like that, on Normandy. Have you ever seen the movie Saving Private Ryan? Everyone should see the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan. I've been told that it's the most realistic war scene in movies they've ever made. Right? Yeah. It's gruesome. If you're a little squeamish, don't watch it. But it's a phenomenal scene. And imagine for a minute you're on one of those landing boats about to hit the beaches of Normandy. Right? The survival rate was like very, very low. Right? Because as soon as they opened up the door to land, the Germans were waiting there. The Nazis were waiting there. They mowed you down. There was no defense. If you were unlucky, you're dead. You couldn't do anything. There's no fighting back. You just hopefully enough. It was just a matter of sending enough boats that overwhelmed the German forces. And so if you were to interview any one of those people as they're about to hit the Normandy beach and ask them this question, if you had a choice, which beach would you like to be hitting now? This one or Miami? Right? There isn't one person in any of those boats that would say this one. They would all say Miami Beach, hands down. Right? But you ask the same people 20 years later, which one was the best moment of their lives when they went to Miami Beach or Normandy Beach, they will say to you, I don't even think I went to Miami Beach. Oh, yeah, I did go to Miami. Yeah. Oh, what was it like? I don't know. Was the weather something about raining? I don't even remember, right? They won't even remember they went to Miami Beach. But for the rest of their lives, imprinted in their souls, in their minds, right? And that's the best experience they've ever had their entire life, right? Now, if you ask them as they're landing on the beach, who are you? They have no concept of self. Mm-hmm. That's humility, that you don't have any idea. You don't come into the picture. I don't count. Now, of course you count. You're a soldier. You're expected to do a job, but you don't think about that. You just land, you say that's what basic training is all about, that they've drilled in you how to respond so you don't think anymore. That's what humility is all about. Right?
Subsuming yourself, subsuming the self in something meaningful.
It doesn't even have to be something meaningful.
Something greater than yourself.
You could be, playing music. You could, I mean, it's agree. It is meaningful, right? You're baking a cake. I mean, there is an element of meaning in it, right? You're playing a game of golf, right? But when you lose, you can't experience life if you're into yourself.
Because then you're just focused on yourself and you can't focus on other things.
Right, you will deprive you of the experience.
It's not that you don't count, you don't focus on yourself. You don't keep thinking about the self.
Right, exactly.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, so you said so humility is not, sorry?
Because you do count, you don't think about yourself.
Okay, you can say it that way, right, very good. Right, that's a nice way of saying it. Right, very good. Right, so humility is not this downer experience or downer emotion that the Western world has of it. Right, if Rav Nach always used to say, people think that humility is that it's self-deprecation. So if I say you're nice, then no, I'm not. Right, it's to put yourself down. Right, and that's antithetical. He says that the great proof of this is that is a very interesting story. I was speaking at a business conference, a Fortune magazine thing, and the headline speaker was Jim Collins. I don't know if you know who he is. He's a very famous business writer, and he's written a number of bestsellers. And he just came out with a book called something about CEOs. What makes a great CEO? And he's a scientist. He's a Stanford professor. So he discusses business concepts from the point of view of research. So he went through all the research of a definition of what makes a great CEO, taking a company, stock prices, and all kinds of different variables to be able to judge, right? And he went around through America, all these public companies, trying to figure out what makes a great CEO. He says, after all the research, everything, the conclusion we all came to, he had a team of people working on this, was, he said, these are his words, was shocking to me. That's how he said it. He said, because the most important virtue that determines whether a CEO is going to be great or not is humility. Right? So in the break, I went up to him and said to him, it's a funny thing you should say that, because the Bible says only one virtue by Moses, I use Moses by him, right, is Moses, right? And he heard that and he was viscerally moved. He jumped back because he knew his Bible. And he said, sorry, I missed this point. When he was giving his talk, he said, they did all the research. So they went over the minutes of the board meetings when they were interviewing the CEOs. He said the most consistent line that this new CEO said when they were asked to be the CEO is, "You've got the wrong guy." That was the most consistent line. That not everyone said it, but that was the one line that a lot of them said. If they said one line, that was it. So when I told this to Jim Collins, he said, exactly. That's what Moses said to God. You got the wrong guy. You follow? And here he is. He thinks he's like some Stanford professor, uncovered the secret of life, the elixir of life. And I'm pointing out to him, right? It's in the Bible. He didn't like that so much. Wasn't go down very well. It was funny. But the point is, right, humility is not, and this is what Malcolm made this point, humility is not self-deprecating. It's not a wallflower. It's not you sit there and just take the abuse and you fall under the carpet or stuff like that. Is that someone with real humility is a hero, is a champion. He's aggressive. They take the bull by the horns. They are not aggressive in in a pain in the neck way, right? Why? Because they see the problem. They don't say, "Who am I to deal with the problem?" Because they don't think about themselves. See, when you say, who am I to deal with the problem? That's arrogance. You follow?
Why is that arrogance?
Because you're
I would think
thinking
it's the
about
exact opposite.
No, humility is you don't think about yourself. Arrogance is you do.
Oh, because you're thinking about yourself in
Right.
relation to the problem.
Who am
If
I
you really
to-
cared about the problem, you wouldn't
Right.
think about yourself and you would do the best you can.
Because then you God forbid, God forbid, God forbid, right? Your 3-year-old, right, maybe younger, falls in the swimming pool. What do?
Jump right in.
Who are you to save a 3-year-old?
It's my kid. What are you talking about?
Exactly. You understand? You don't think about other. You understand? You know, when it's your kid's got the problem, you're excuse me, right? You know, I can explain that. The guy says, "I'm a Harvard professor. How are you you're challenging my diagnosis of your child?" Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Exactly. Is that who are you? I don't have to be anybody. I'm a nobody. Right? Is that the only thing I care about is the problem. Anyone's problem, any problem. Right? The world's going to pot. We've got to do something. But who are you? Are you a world expert on problems? Yeah, it doesn't matter. I don't know who I am. Is that that's the way to think. Before Simcha Weinberg, he told me we have the letters of Rabbi Akiva Eger. Rabbi Akiva Eger applied for the job. We have people in our history who had no idea who they were. Right? Rabbi Akiva Eger applied for the job of the janitor of a nearby synagogue. Right? Rabbi Akiva Eger, through most generations, we have a gadol, but there's always like 2 or 3 other people who are also, no small fry. Right? In Rabbi Akiva's generation, it was Rabbi Akiva Eger, and that's it. Right? There was nobody close. It was just him. He was a shining star. Right? That was his time. If you ever learn a piece of Gemara, and you read Rabbi Akiva Eger, he asks, he just boggles the mind how someone could think like this. So he applied for the job of janitor, the local synagogue, and they didn't know how to say no. I mean, the gadol wants to be the janitor. What are we going to say? Like, I'm sorry, it's taken. Like, what are you going to tell him, right? So they couldn't say no. So they said, okay. So all the shuls, the communities, put this shul in cherem. Right? Excommunicated the shul. Right? You can't have the gadol being the janitor. Right? Is that? So they fired him.
Because they were excommunicated.
Yeah. So he wrote a letter, and we have, one of these said to me, we have the letter. Right? He writes to the shul, he says, please tell me what I did wrong so I can become a better janitor. Right? He had no idea who he was. There's a Rashi, the same thing. We have letters of him. People would write and ask him shilas, and he'd write them back. He said, I don't know why you're asking me. There are people in this world that know these issues far better than me. And he would quote their names, and the people he would quote were his students.
Wow.
Right? He had no concept. He's not thinking about who I am. You see, and that is how you learn. It's no accident that these people are getting great in Torah. Because when you don't have any concept of yourself, all you have is the Torah. It's the thinking of yourself, and it's what stops you from standing up against the Nazi, or what stops you from standing up against injustice, or what stops you from learning Torah, what stops you from anything, who I am. Either I'm too big to do this, or I'm too small to do this. When you say I'm too, Noah says this all the time. If you say you're not up for doing the job, right? I'm not qualified to do the job, you're arrogant. You get it?
What if you say I'm too overqualified? Is that arrogance too?
Yeah.
So either way, it's arrogance.
Right.
Because you're thinking, you're including yourself in the equation.
Right. The Talmud says a phenomenal thing. So Pirkei Avos, it says, do not believe in yourself until the day of your death. Right? So you see how antithetical this is to the Western idea of self-confidence. So the Talmud says, don't believe in yourself until the day of your death. What happens on the day you die? Like all of a sudden now I can feel good. So what does it mean, don't believe in yourself? You've heard me tell this story 1,000 times. Right? Someone drives up to their house is in flames, you rush the front door, the fire chief screams at you, you can't go in there. He says, I don't care. My 3-year-old is on the 2nd floor. That parent will do something that not only a trained fireman cannot do, but will not do, or will not do, but cannot do. Right? They can't do it. Right? Why? Because it's your father. Right? It's your child. It's your child on the 2nd floor. Hi, Yechiel.
Hi, Rabbi.
Hi, good to see you. Thank you for the Zoom.
Our pleasure.
So what's going on there, right? Is the parent doesn't consider themselves. They just see the problem. They don't think about what they're capable of. So that's what the Talmud says. Pirkei Avos, it says, don't believe yourself. You don't know what you can do. You have no idea. Right? So how do you know what you can do? If you can see the problem, that's the Almighty telling you, you can do it. You can solve it. The Almighty is putting problems in front of you that you can solve. Right? If you think about yourself, you won't solve it. If you think, I can do this, I can't do this, right? We have no idea. Until when? The day of your death. What happens on the day of your death? You look back over your life and go, wow, I did that, I did that, I did that. Right? That's amazing. Right? There's a famous story, the Netziv. There's a famous, he's on his deathbed. I believe it was the Netziv. He's on his deathbed and he asks them to bring his Sfarim. Right? So it's okay. And he brings his Sfarim. And he asked him, why do you want your Sfarim? It's not like, he's on his deathbed. What are you going to do? Right? Make some corrections? Like, what are you going to do? He says, no. He says, I want to bring them upstairs. He says, what do you mean? So he told a story. He says, when he was a little boy, he wasn't the most studious of children. And he overheard his father tell his mother that, a little boy, he's not from the learners, right? I should take him to like a tradesman, and he'll learn to be a carpenter or whatever, right? You understand? He'll have a nice living, right? That's his mission in life. And he overheard his father say, and he ran downstairs crying, begging his father to give him another chance. So he says, if he had never heard that conversation, he would be a carpenter now.
Did his parents know that he was there?
Yeah, because he overheard and came down and begged them to give him another chance.
No, but she's asking, were they aware that he was listening in?
Oh, I don't know. Apparently, I don't know. So I don't know that part of the story. So he said that the important point is, he said, if I never heard that conversation, I would be on my deathbed now as a simple carpenter. Maybe I make fancy cabinet, I don't know, whatever. Right? And I'd get upstairs and they would say to me, where are your Sfarim? And he said, not only would I not understand what they meant, but I would have believed it would have been impossible. I could have written that? Are you serious? Is that we don't know what we're capable of until we have no excuse but to do it. Right?
Your back is against the wall. You're in the corner.
Right. You read my book, it's in my book. Right? It's right in here. You have no excuse. We don't know what we're capable of until we have to do it. When you have to run into that burning building, right? Then you're going to do it. Right? The famous story of Laura Schultz. A 63-year-old grandmother picked up a Buick, the back of a Buick. I think it was in the 70s, something like that, 80s. when Buicks are really heavy cars, right? Now this woman had never picked anything heavier than a bag of pet food, right? So how did she do it? Her grandson was pinned underneath. Now, if you'd asked her, do you believe in yourself enough to pick up a Buick? She would say it's impossible. Not only would she say impossible, Arnold Schwarzenegger would say it's impossible. You understand? You don't know what you're capable of until you have to do it. So when you think about yourself, when you think about who you are, you lose touch of what you're capable of living life, of living in the moment. That goes for feeling good about yourself and, right, self-praise, and negative. When you think, oh, I'm such a terrible, but whatever things, whatever, tapes we got going on in our head, right? Let people down or whatever things going on in your head, right? That's arrogance. The Almighty runs the world. You do your job. Solve the problem. If you're dealing with the issues at hand that are in front of you, you don't have time for any type of self-absorption.
So you're saying even negative self-absorption is arrogance just as much as positive self-absorption is arrogance.
That's right. It's all arrogance.
Both are a denial of God.
Denial of God. Right. Right. Thinking like you're
the
you're
depression
control.
and arrogance are two sides of the same coin.
Right. Very good. Excellent. Okay. So that's humility. To be continued. Thanks, guys. See you next week. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye, everyone. Good night.
Thank you, Rabbi.